Right is Might, Chapter 2. Infallible Behavioral Formula. Shortly after my initiation into the fraternity of those who must work for a living, I made the disappointing discovery that I and nearly all people were slaves to habit, convention, governmental demands, employers, but above all, people were slaves to the need for a source of continuing income. What is said and done is, in large measure, is dictated by that need. It was a little like discovering I was an anteater and could not get a meal except by grubbing in the dirt. It didn't seem right. I wanted freedom from such slavery, so I started looking for someone who had turned the trick. I didn't find him. Lacking opportunity to copy a successful practitioner, I decided to strike out for myself. At first I got into a certain amount of confusion, but as a result, I also learned how to be free by embracing a surprisingly simple concept. If you make up your mind to it, you can do what you want to do, and you can do it to the exclusion of doing what you don't want to do. It has been many years since I first phrased that concept. To say that I have lived by it ever since would not be truthful, but I have come a great deal closer to it than you might expect. The effort to do it led to an astonishing sequence of discoveries. One of the first discoveries was that there are strings attached to the concept. A person cannot constitute himself or herself sole arbiter of his destiny without regard for the consequences of his behavior in the lives of others. I am not referring to legal entanglements. I am talking about entanglements that are essentially moral and why it is necessary to avoid them. Avoiding moral entanglements is, it turned out, puts no restrictions on anybody's freedom. Instead, the techniques of avoiding moral entanglements are exactly the techniques that make genuine freedom possible. Those techniques are embodied in a simple formula that I gradually learned to use, and its implications go far beyond the welfare of the individual. To apply that formula, you need common sense rather than unquestioning faith. When you turn the switch that feeds power to a light bulb, it goes on. You don't have to understand what you are doing. You don't have to know anything about electricity. You don't have to have faith in the result. The light goes on nevertheless. You take the result for granted because you have seen it happen so often. Besides, you know you get the same result if you turn the light switch by accident. You don't get conceited over your prowess in producing light because you know that a monkey could turn the switch and get the same result. Your only advantage over the monkey, perhaps, is that you know the location of the switch and what it is for. In the next pages, I am going to locate a switch that will produce enlightenment and give you the advantages that are presently benefiting only a fortunate few. It has often been said that on this earth there is all that is needed to enjoy a veritable Garden of Eden, where people could live replete with happiness and freedom from want. That is true. There is an easily mastered formula for which so fortunate an estate could be achieved, and it is the formula that we are about to discuss. The wonder is that so many centuries have passed while mankind has neglected to bring that formula into focus and see it for what it is. The safety of everybody depends on adoption of that formula by the masses. That may be hard to induce, but whether it is finally induced or not, the average person can create a private Garden of Eden, replete with happiness and freedom from want. The formula is the key. Only by adopting that formula can the individual make himself free and invulnerable. Only thus does a person make a proper contribution to freedom and invulnerability for society as a whole. In other words, by opening the door to abundance for himself, he also opens the door, if only a crack, to abundance for all other fellow beings. Do not be surprised that the formula is simple, for simplicity is a natural characteristic of every basic concept that has motivated humanity. Here are the words of the formula that can transform your life. Always think, say, and do what is right. Refuse to think, say, or do what is wrong. To a certain few people, that formula comes as no surprise. And I'll tell you something about those people. In a world filled with conflict and tribulation, those people function calmly. They aren't seeking peace of mind because they have it, nor does it resemble a quiet somnolence that comes from ignoring the troubles of society and pretending that all's well with the world. Those people are realists. They know what is going wrong, and they are doing something constructive about it. They want to act instead of relax. They want to work instead of play. They want to meet life head on because their skills, energies, and ingenuity are constantly challenged by the opportunities and events of life. There is something else about those people. They are doing exactly what they want to do. No vocational troubles plague them. Whatever they attempt works out. Their lives open before them and present them with every opportunity they need. They never have to serve contradictory purposes or interests, never have to be two places at once, never suffer from anxiety or depression, not while living in accord with that formula. But tell that formula to the average person, and you may be rebuffed. At once, a dozen objections are likely to tumble forth. Quote, "But I always do the right thing," unquote, one may say. He does? Then he is different from almost any person I have ever met. As a matter of sober fact, I am not sure that I know anybody who can clearly distinguish between right and wrong in all decisions. Why is this? I shall discuss in chapters to come. Why that is, I shall discuss in chapters to come. In the light of that knowledge, I shall explain exactly what a person has to do to develop the ability to make unerring right choices. Sometimes it doesn't pay to do the right thing, another may say. The simple fact is that doing the right thing always pays, and that the only way to get into trouble is to do the wrong thing. The statement that wrong action can lead to right results, or that right actions can lead to wrong results, is a contradiction in terms, although it is true that right action handled in a wrong way can cause trouble because an element of wrong was introduced. To say that it doesn't pay to do the right thing is to say that right is not expedient. That is untrue. Except under a common distortion of thought, the terms right and expedient are identical in meaning. The reason there are two words to describe the same concept is that so many persons are unaware of the truth, for it is a truth that is known only to persons who are spiritually enlightened, and it is a truth everybody should learn. There will be skeptics who dispute the basic assertion that literal right is always expedient. Those skeptics tend to pride themselves on their intelligence and on their application of logic to all their problems. The next point should give them pause. The value of logic is that it affords a system of exact reasoning. Perhaps the most widely understood device of logic is the syllogism. All men are mortal. I am a man, therefore I am mortal. Here is a syllogism that puts my point across. What is right, according to William James, is what works. What works, according to the dictionary, is expedient. Therefore, what is right is expedient. Who dares to say that right is wrong? Who could deny that right is expedient? I have met people who have done both. Logical reasoning, I have learned by experience, is not enough to satisfy dissenters to truth. They labor the question interminably. often in resentment and sometimes in outright anger. Yet some of those people have great influence, and in proportion to their influence, they are a threat to society's welfare. When logic leads those people into a trap that refutes their preconceived notions, they forsake logic and resort to emotion. They are reluctant to accept what they have never considered because it is inconsistent with many misguided events of their past. Have they no confidence in logic, the science of exact reasoning? Have they more confidence in the prejudiced promptings of their emotions? Unfortunately, they have. Even in the commonest parlance, what is not expedient is wrong. It cannot work, so it cannot be right. Therefore, only what is expedient is right. In any parlance, only what is expedient can work. If it works, it cannot be wrong. Therefore, only what is expedient is right. Thus, we come out with the same conclusions. What is right cannot be inexpedient or wrong. A dozen past compromises with right may spring to the mind of any reasonably honest person. All logic to the contrary, he considers those compromises to be expedient. How can he justify them? It is not enough to say that he cannot. He may insist on his point despite all the contradictions of logic, so he must be given no room for doubt. If possible, he must be convinced. In view of the history of human affairs, that may not be easy, even though he knows that the basic tenets of our broad social policies have brought human affairs to their present sorry estate. Always do the right thing. Right action leads to right results. Wrong action leads to wrong results. Right action cannot lead to wrong results. Wrong action cannot lead to right results. Right can never contradict proper duty. All are identical by definition. These statements are clear and distinct, inarguable, and obvious. It is strange that any person would question them. Here, I should like to say that I have emphasized the establishment of what most people instinctively know. If you are puzzled with what I have heavily stressed, the identity between right and expediency, let me explain why. For many years I have been bursting with the ideas that fills these pages and have continued and discussed them with a wide variety of people, most of them having resentfully disagreed that right is always expedient. On no other subject have I encountered such frequent and serious skepticism. There are many who have rejected the truth in the past, are rejecting it today, and unless we put a stop to their folly, will reject it in the future to our cost as well as theirs. Occasionally, however, I discover somehow who raised his eyebrows in surprise that the point should be expressed at all. I thought everybody knew that, he would say. Why all the fuss about anything so obvious? The sharp distinction between the two groups at first was puzzling, but those who agreed provided stimulation, while those who didn't provided a challenge. The stimulation kept me on the job, and the challenge taught me the arguments that must be met. Point by point, I have learned the objections, so that today I think I can answer them all. In recent years, I have tested the answers by trying them on the skeptics, and those skeptics are just as prevalent now as when I started, but there is a big difference. The skeptics do not remain skeptical. Instead, they say, "I hope you get that story across. It's exactly what this sick society needs."